Sadly, mental illness affects a high proportion of the Australian population, with Beyond Blue reporting that 45% of the Australian population will experience a mental health condition in their lifetime, and that's staggering. So as employers, how do we deal with mental illness in our workplace? How do you deal with mental illness in your workplace? And here's the question, is it actually any of our business? So it's not always easy to ascertain whether an employee has a mental illness. First of all, employees don't always disclose a mental illness voluntarily, and nor are they legally obliged to do so. Pre-employment medical assessments also will not always disclose a mental illness unless the medical condition actually affects the inherent requirements of the relevant role being carried out. And then there's the privacy and anti-discrimination legislation, which may also prevent us employers and managers asking about possible medical conditions. So despite these restrictions, an employee's mental health condition will be relevant to you, the employer, if it affects safety in the workplace or the employee's ability to perform those inherent requirements of their role. So when one of you or your managers do notice an employee exhibiting behaviour that would fit the description of misconduct or underperformance, and that could be something like uncharacteristic lateness, a general lack of focus, which ends up resulting in poor quality of work, for example, or disrespect. The knee-jerk reaction, I know, is usually can be to performance manage the employee or jump to disciplinary action. However, it's essential that as soon as you do notice changes in their behaviour, you show support for the employee early on. And by support here, I mean checking in with them to discuss the change in behaviour that you've noticed. The Australian Human Rights Commission have actually released a really helpful guide. It's called Workers with Mental Illness, a practical guide for managers. And this urges employers, when noticing changes in behaviour, to show that support for employees early on. And so this is now the expectation. So this doesn't by any means mean that you aren't entitled to apply your standard performance management processes to all employees where you have a legitimate concern about their performance. But it's essential to take into account personal circumstances and whether there is a mental illness that may be contributing to that poor performance. So in summary, the key question you, the employer, must ask before commencing any performance management processes or disciplinary action is actually whether the underperformance or misconduct is caused by a mental health condition, or is it simply underperformance or misconduct. So I'll leave you here with two key points of advice. The first one is that discussion with the employee about their actions is always advisable before making a decision to dismiss them. And the second point of advice is make sure you afford him or her, your employee, procedural fairness by giving them an opportunity to explain to you what their mental state was. So this area is really tricky, and it's easy to get tripped up as an employer not following the proper processes. So if you're in doubt, reach out to us here at HR Tactics. We'll be happy to let you know how we can help.